The student asks the question, why is it always discussed as if it's so linear, as if everything is so certain? And does any of this actually make anything better? Hey, hi, Scott. Good morning. If you're new around here, Scott isn't, but if you're new around here, my name is Jeff. And every morning I walk over to the coffee shop and invite you to walk with me and unpack some of the things that I'm thinking about. We usually talk about topics pertaining to growth mindset, mindfulness, those types of things. And today I'm thinking a lot about questions from one of my graduate students yesterday. And he was asking specifically about AI. And he's talking about, everybody says that AI is going to do this, it's going to change this in this way, and so on and so forth, as if it's a foregone conclusion. And then the question, is it going to, or does it make anything better? And so I think, that's a two-parter, obviously. But on one hand, why does everybody talk about it as if it's a foregone conclusion? Well, partially because it's here. Now, he brought up a good point. It's like, Facebook actually changed the name of their parent company to Meta because of the hype of the metaverse. And then eventually went, yeah, no, it's not happening. Okay, that's a fair point. Although metaverse was back in the news last week, I think it was, or the week before that, something like that. Recently, metaverse is back in the news, so it's still around. NFTs were quote unquote all the rage for a while. There still some discussion of it. NFTs are still around, and part of that conversation was that NFTs are probably the future of contracts. And and he says, well, why? Well, blockchain and the whole idea that non-fungible tokens, creating indisputable contract agreements, I guess. I don't have all the terminology completely nailed down there, but it has the potential to really change the way we make agreements and track agreements. And then he asked the question, is that necessarily better? Honestly, it's not. It's just a tracking mechanism. Right? Does that make things better? On some level, yes. But in terms of the actual agreements, is it going to change the way that we agree to things? No, it's not. So, fair point. Blue sky, yeah, it is. The sky is blue, at least right now. I haven't really checked the weather report. I know we're supposed to have a winter storm moving in. I don't think until tomorrow or Friday, but it's balmy. It's 20 degrees warmer right now than it was yesterday. So, and pretty calm. So, yeah, that's really nice. And as far as the owls go, I haven't seen owls in a long time. I don't know where they went with all the construction that's been going on over here. It would appear that they moved somewhere, but I'm hoping they come back sometime. But we'll walk through the owl bowl over here and see. But it's been months and months since I've seen any. So this student, his question, does it make anything better? Is it a foregone conclusion? Yes, some things are. Why do people hype it, talk about it as if it's a foregone conclusion? Usually for their own purposes. Usually because they're trying to sell a coin, they're trying to sell an NFT, that are trying to make a profit on metaverse property. I've been publishing. I've done a couple of podcast interviews for people recently, and I've been publishing some clips from some of those, and one of the things that we talked about in one of those podcasts is that every startup founder out there, and got a lot of startup founder friends and connections, and I really appreciate all of them and what they do and their thought process and the reason they do what they do. I've run startup incubators. I run my graduate class like a startup incubator. So not hating on startups or founders at all, but every founder at some point says, well, hey, my new whatever platform or software or whatever is better than your Excel spreadsheet that you've been using for 20 years. So you should buy my thing. Maybe it is, maybe it's more efficient. Maybe it's more organized. Maybe it's whatever, but I know how to use the Excel spreadsheet, and I'm used to using, all those things come into play. So, is it better? I don't know. I think that the an important thing to realize in this conversation is the definition of better is in the eye of the beholder. Right? Who gets to decide what better is? In terms of buying a startup software, you do as the customer. Is this better than what you're using? If not, don't buy it. It's change for the sake of change is not necessarily good. So this is where the thought process started, with this conversation in class yesterday. I've been thinking a lot about it. And, how does this apply to the conversations that I have on my show, Java with Jeff, which Scott is almost always in the audience there, or in these conversations as we walk over to the coffee shop? Does it make anything better? Well, somehow we've got to get this into the context of growth for the purposes of walking with me or Java with Jeff. And the scenario that I proposed earlier this morning on Java with Jeff is, let's just say that you, as a person, you, the human being, you start working on yourself, whatever that means. You start working on your personal growth. Because when I talk about growth, I always talk about it through three lenses: personal, relationship, and professional growth, because I think that's sort of the holistic person, right? That kind of makes up our lives as human beings. And I think we can agree that if you want your relationships to grow, if you want to grow in relationships, then you have to work on yourself first, right? You have to show up in growth mode before growth can happen in any of these other places, relationships or professional, etc. We'll see the little frozen. No surprise. I was, as a kid, when we moved to Chicago, I always loved Frozen Creek, or, partially Frozen Creek, the frozen water. We played hockey on the frozen lakes. None of us knew how to play or had any gear or anything to speak of, but, we were out there playing. Ice there's something fascinating about all of that. But back to growth, right? if you're going to grow in any of these aspects, you have to show up yourself in growth mode. I don't know if I realize sometimes how weird that must look. So they blocked the bridge off before they started construction, and it certainly needs renovation. At least the boards, right, that are the platform for the bridge needs work. But so they welded these barriers on here, and I suppose there's a chance that I could be walking across there one morning. You could see me fall through the bridge, but honestly, it doesn't seem that bad to me. But everybody climbs, not everybody, obviously, but a lot of people climb over the barrier there. That's what that look is, climbing over. So growth mode, you have to show up in growth mode for yourself, for your relationships, professionally, whether it's a job or your business or whatever it is. And so you're working on yourself. You're working on your mindfulness. You're working on your emotional intelligence. You're working on your physical self. Whatever the things are that you are doing for growth. Your therapist has told you, your personal trainer has told you, your your yoga instructor, your faith leader, your mindfulness coach, whoever is helping to guide you through this personal growth transformation. And it starts to become visible, starts to become noticeable. And for all the people that are around you that may celebrate the fact that you look better, you sound better, you act better, however that manifests itself outwardly, for all the people that see that and recognize that and celebrate that and say, hey, you look great. Hey, it seems like you're really doing well. Whatever it is that they say, there may be some that that you have a relationship with, friend, family member, client, significant other, whoever they are, that says, I remember when. Basically, I remember when you were different. I remember when you didn't get up every morning at 5 a.m. and go to the gym or whatever the things are. There are people that'll say that and they'll say, I like the old you. I liked it better when. I liked you better when. And so you're growing. Back to the student's question, does change, does innovation, in the context of that conversation, does AI necessarily make things better? Does change, does growth necessarily make things better? I think I've fully landed on I don't know. I think I've fully landed on the idea that better is in the eye of the beholder, right? If you're doing these things for your personal growth, you're changing in these ways because you want to, because you need to, then yes, that growth is better. That growth is good. And then if that person comes along and says, I'd like you better win, I think that's a good thing. First of all, that's about them, right? It's their attitudes, their perspective. It's their feelings. It's not your responsibility. It's not about you. And that tells you who they are, where they are. It also gives you the opportunity to make a decision. Gives you the opportunity to decide whether or not this person still needs your energy. So at some point, if that relationship falls apart, again, whatever that means, friend, neighbor, client, family member, significant other, whoever it is, whatever the relationship is, if that relationship falls apart, at some point you may mourn that, and you may need to find the perspective that, you know what, this has gone away. This season has passed. These things have changed, and I'm better for it. And that can be hard. It can be hard to get to that perspective, but it's up to us. Right? I think it's up to us to determine it. I was saying this earlier as well. Actually, I sent the email. Time is it? 9:46. I hit the send button about half an hour ago, announcing something that Mark R. LePage and I are working on. I'm leading it or launching it. It's an accelerator to go from 1x to 10x. And as Mark and I have been talking about this, working on this, building it, developing the messaging for it. One of the things we were actually talking about it yesterday is if you are a business owner that wants to 10x your business, you've got the target is you got $1 million of revenue, but you want to 10x that. You want to grow to $10 billion of revenue. You are going to, in order to grow in that way, in order to scale in that way, you're going to have to make changes. You are going to have to leave some things behind. There are some things that you are currently doing. And then this is not, right? It's not bad things that you're doing necessarily. It's not insufficient things that you're doing necessarily. But you are going to have to change some of the things that you do and how you do them, because you have to change in order to grow. Macchiato, please. Absolutely. It won't spill if you... Yeah, exactly. So you know what? Now you go to the coffee shop and they have the, shops have the for here mugs again. And of course, like, that story when you and I have talked about that before, it's these big latte mugs, right? But they do the little macchiatos in the little Dimitas cups, which somehow are easier, I think. Even though they're just as full, if not fuller, more full, they bring it out to you. So I can just wait for it. I usually, they've renovated that coffee shop, I think, since you and I have been there. But there's a standing bar now. So a lot of times I'm just right there at the standing bar. I don't want to take up. They lost some of the tables and things because of the renovation. So I don't take up as much space. I just stand there by a standing bar, but they bring it out to you. So I don't have to worrying about spilling it. But the, what was I saying? The scaling from 1x to 10x. If that's your goal, and this is not judgment or anything, right? It's just, if that's your goal, then you are going to have to leave some things behind. You're going to have to start doing some things differently than you used to. Right? It's you can't change by staying the same. That old quote that's, I think it's a misattribution, but Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I don't think he actually said that. I'll have to look that up again, but that's the thing, right? If our desire is better, if our desire is growth, we need to be able to take ownership of that. We need to develop the definition What is that? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And then as we do the work, as we get curious, as we develop the belief that we can change and grow, as we decide to take action and take action that becomes motion and momentum that leads to change and growth, we get to decide, what is good? What is better? Is this growth that? We're the arbiter of that. So, that became part of the discussion with the student yesterday, with the graduate student yesterday. Who decides what's better? Right? Unfortunately, in what we were talking about, the reality that we see in the world right now is that the people that determine what is better are usually extremely rich people with a lot of power that decide better based on their profit. I don't think that's cynical. I think that's real. And I've been listening to this. What's that? Just forgot the title of it. I've been listening to a book. It's a really good book on basically the history of AI. Focuses a lot on OpenAI, the story of OpenAI. But there's a striking story, striking commentary about Peter Thiel. And it becomes even more striking once you understand his role, his relationship in politics right now, and others like him. But this attitude that the job of society is basically to make him richer. That's my paraphrasing of that. But unfortunately, that's where we are, right? The better is probably not better. The better that's driving the change, that's driving the growth, the development of technology, et cetera, is probably not at all what we would consider better. So the good news is we can take ownership of our growth. We can do the things. It's our responsibility to do the things that we need to do in order to grow. And we can be the arbiter of what better is in that context. We control the things that we can control. That's our responsibility. Let go of the things that we can't control. All right, Scott, I made it all the way over on this balmy day. So thanks for walking with me. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.